When my dad died, my stepmom held a secret funeral and showed off a diamond ring, she claimed. He said only I deserved this. But that ring was left to me in his will. Then she sold his car, emptied his safe, and blocked my number. I was cut out of everything, until I got the lawyer he fired to talk. I found out my dad was dead through Facebook. Not a phone call, not a text. A Facebook post from one of his old army buddies that said, "Rest easy, brother." My stomach dropped. I sat there in my tiny apartment in Tacoma, scrolling through condolences from people I hadn't seen in years, all saying goodbye to my dad, and I hadn't even known he was gone. By the time I called my stepmom, Karen, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. She didn't even sound sad, just tired. "Oh, yeah," she said, like she was talking about a broken dishwasher. "He passed away last week. It was quick." I remember going quiet for a few seconds, trying to process her tone. Then I asked, "Why didn't you call me?" Her answer, "It was all just too much to handle, and you live so far. I didn't want to bother you." Bother me? My dad was dead. When I asked about the funeral, she said, "It was private, just a few close friends." I found out later it was 3 days before that call. No one had told me. That same day, she uploaded a photo on Facebook, her standing next to Dad's closed casket, smiling, with a new diamond ring on her finger. The caption said, "You said only I deserved this. I'll treasure it forever." Except I knew that ring. It wasn't hers. It was mine. My dad had told me about it a year before when he updated his will after his heart scare. It had been his mother's ring, a family heirloom. He wanted me to have it one day, for someone who deserves your heart. When I asked her about it, she got defensive fast. "Your dad wanted me to have it," she said, her voice all tight and clipped. "Don't start drama, please." 2 weeks later, I went to his house to find the door locks changed. His old truck, the one he promised me, was gone. The safe where he kept family documents, old watches, and letters, empty. Karen texted me once more, "Don't contact me again. Everything's been handled. Let it go." Then she blocked my number. But I didn't let it go. Because a month later, while I was trying to settle his remaining credit card bills, I stumbled on something weird, a charge to a law firm I recognized. My dad's old lawyer, the one he supposedly fired last year. Something about that didn't sit right. I couldn't shake it. So I drove 3 hours to that lawyer's office. He looked surprised to see me, pale, even when I said my name. Then he said something that changed everything. "Your father didn't fire me. In fact, he came to see me the day before he died." He paused, watching my face. And he said, "If anything happens to me, make sure my daughter gets everything. Don't let Karen touch a thing." My chest went cold. I could barely breathe. The lawyer leaned forward, lowering his voice. "But the will your stepmother filed, it's not the one he signed." That's when I realized my dad's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a setup, and she'd been planning it all along. My dad, Mark, wasn't perfect, but he was the kind of man people trusted. He worked as a mechanic in Tacoma for over 20 years, ran his own shop, and everyone knew him as the guy who would fix your car even if you couldn't pay right away. He raised me alone from the time I was 8, after my mom left for California and never came back. He used to say, "I'm not rich, kid, but what I have will always be yours." And he meant it. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Then came Karen. He met her at a church picnic about 6 years ago. She was younger, prettier in a put-together kind of way, and always smelled like expensive perfume. She'd been a hairdresser, recently divorced, and told everyone her ex had ruined her credit. She laughed a lot around my dad, that fake, too loud laugh people use when they're sizing up a situation. At first, I wanted to like her. Dad looked happy for the first time in years, but small things started to bother me. She'd accidentally throw out old photos of my mom, call me sweetheart in that condescending way, and kept suggesting Dad sell his shop to focus on enjoying life. One night, when I was visiting, I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen saying, "He's worth more dead than alive, but I just have to wait." When I confronted her, she laughed it off and said she was talking about an insurance policy for her dog grooming business. Dad got mad at me for accusing her. I dropped it. A year later, he sold his shop to retire early, he said, and they moved into a bigger house outside of town. Karen started wearing designer bags, got her nails done every week, and drove a new Lexus. My dad, meanwhile, looked thinner, quieter. He told me he was having heart issues again, but Karen always answered his phone when I called. Then one night, about 6 months before he died, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked exhausted, eyes red, voice trembling. "Listen," he said, sitting on my couch. "If anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll call Jeff, my lawyer. He's got everything." He handed me a folded paper, a copy of his will. His handwriting covered the last page: ring and truck to Emily. Everything else to be divided equally. I kept that paper in my desk drawer, not really understanding how serious he was until later. Then came the weird messages. Texts from Dad that didn't sound like him, short, cold, sometimes just one word. Once he wrote, "Don't come by, I'm tired." I asked if Karen was texting for him. No response. The last time I saw him was 2 weeks before he died. He seemed scared. He hugged me longer than usual and said, "I love you, kid, don't let anyone tell you different." And then nothing. Now, sitting in that lawyer's office, hearing that he'd updated his will again the day before he died, I felt my whole body go numb. He never told me about that visit. And if what the lawyer said was true, Karen had lied about more than just the ring. She'd lied about everything. The lawyer hesitated before he spoke again. "There's something else you need to see," he said quietly. "Something your stepmother doesn't know I kept a copy of." He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder with my dad's handwriting on it. On the front, written in red ink, were 4 words: "If I don't make it." And inside that folder was the first proof that Karen hadn't just stolen his things, she might have stolen his life. I sat there in Jeff's office, gripping that folder like it was a live wire. My hands were shaking, and he must have noticed because he poured me a glass of water before opening it. Inside were handwritten notes, printed emails, and what looked like copies of insurance forms. The first page was a note in my dad's handwriting. "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Karen has been changing things behind my back, accounts, policies, even my prescriptions. I don't feel safe." I froze. "Prescriptions?" I asked. Jeff nodded grimly. "He told me he suspected she was tampering with his medication." My stomach dropped. The next few pages were emails, my dad trying to contact his doctor about changes to his heart meds. He wrote that Karen had started handling his refills, and he wanted to make sure the dosage hadn't changed. The replies from the doctor's office said that his wife had already requested an adjustment. I couldn't breathe. Jeff explained that your dad came to him 2 days before he died, saying he wanted to make sure his daughter was protected. "He was scared," Jeff said quietly. "He told me he thought Karen was trying to drain his accounts and that she'd been pushing him to sign new documents." And then, just like that, the next day my dad was gone. Heart failure, no autopsy requested. Karen claimed he didn't want one. I left Jeff's office that day with a copy of that folder and a sick feeling in my gut. Over the next week, I started digging. I requested a copy of my dad's death certificate, but it wasn't easy. Karen had listed herself as the sole next of kin. I called the county clerk's office, then the coroner's office. Everyone kept saying the same thing: only the spouse can authorize that. So I decided to find another way. I went to his old house. The locks were changed, but his neighbor, an old guy named Ron who'd known my dad for years, came over and whispered, "She moved out last week. Took everything, movers came at night." He handed me something, a small envelope with my name scrawled on it. "Your dad gave me this just in case," Ron said. "Said if something ever felt off, make sure you get it." Inside was a thumb drive. Back at my apartment, I plugged it into my laptop, and my dad's voice filled the room. It was a video. He was sitting in his garage, looking exhausted but alert. "Hey, Em," he said. "If you're watching this, I didn't get the chance to tell you what's been happening. Karen's been changing things. She says it's for security, but she's emptied accounts and keeps talking about insurance money. She even tried to get me to sign a power of attorney form last week. I refused." He looked straight into the camera. "If I die suddenly, don't believe it was just my heart. Get Jeff. He knows everything." I paused the video. My chest hurt. I emailed Jeff the file immediately. Within an hour, he called me back. His voice was tense. "Emily, that video changes everything. We're going to the police." But before we could even schedule a meeting, Karen somehow found out. That night, she showed up at my apartment. I didn't even hear her coming, just a knock on my door around 10 p.m. When I opened it. She was standing there in all black, holding a box. "Can we talk?" she said, smiling too wide. I froze, phone still in my hand. I just came to drop off something that belongs to you, she said. She set the box on the ground. Your dad would have wanted you to have this. Then she leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. You shouldn't have gone digging, sweetheart. You don't know what you're getting into. She smiled, turned, and walked away. Inside the box was one thing, my dad's wedding ring. And underneath it, a folded photo of the two of them, her handwriting on the back. He's mine, always was. That was the night I decided to stop reacting and start fighting back. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the apartment made me jump. Karen's words kept replaying in my head, you don't know what you're getting into. By morning, I had packed a bag and driven straight to Jeff's office again. I showed him the photo, the note, and told him about her showing up. He didn't even look surprised, just tight-jawed and focused. She's playing a dangerous game, he said. But now that we have the video, the will, and that note, we can go to the police. We just need one more thing, proof she altered those legal documents. So we filed a request with the probate court to review the final will Karen submitted. A week later, we got a copy, and when Jeff put it side by side with the one my dad signed, the differences were obvious. Whole paragraphs rewritten, signatures slightly off. Notary stamp dated 2 days after my dad had already died. It was a forged will. Jeff filed a formal report with the court immediately. He said it would take time, but once they verified the forgery, I'd be able to contest the estate. That night, I got another surprise. I was eating takeout when my phone buzzed, an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "You need to see this." Inside was a single video attachment, timestamped 2 days before my dad died. It showed my dad sitting in the living room, looking tired, Karen behind him pouring something into a glass. He lifted the glass, took a sip, and grimaced. Then she looked straight at the camera and smiled. My stomach turned. I watched it twice to be sure I wasn't imagining things. It was short, only 15 seconds, but the implication was sickening. Someone else had recorded it. I didn't recognize the background noise at first, but after a few replays, I realized there was music faintly playing. The radio station my dad always listened to in the garage. Which meant whoever recorded that video had access to his home surveillance system. Jeff sent it to a private investigator he knew. 2 days later, the investigator called with something that made me feel like I'd been punched. "Emily," he said, "the metadata on that clip, it came from your dad's own security cameras. But here's the thing. Those files were deleted from the cloud 2 hours after your father's time of death." "Deleted by who?" I asked. He hesitated. "The account holder. It was under Karen's email, but there's something else. There's a second user on the account, someone who helped her set it up." My stomach twisted. "Who?" He said a name I hadn't heard in years. "Tom, my cousin, my dad's own nephew. The same cousin who worked in IT and who my dad had fired from his shop years ago after catching him stealing cash from the register." I called him that night. He answered on the third ring, voice shaky. You shouldn't be calling me." I asked him straight up if he'd helped Karen. He went silent for a long time, then said, "She promised me a cut, said your dad was gonna change everything in the will and I'd get nothing. She said it was just fixing things." My hands went numb. "Fixing what?" His voice cracked. "She said your dad wasn't gonna make it anyway, that it was better to take care of it before he changed his mind." "Take care of it," I repeated. "You mean," he hung up. I sat there in the dark, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, and realized what he'd just admitted without saying the words. Karen hadn't just forged documents. She hadn't just stolen money or jewelry. She'd killed him, and she hadn't done it alone. After that call, something in me hardened. I wasn't just grieving anymore, I was done being quiet. Done letting her get away with it. I didn't call the police right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I went in half-prepared, she'd bury it like she buried everything else. Karen had connections, and I was just the emotional daughter. I needed to be smart. So I started documenting everything. Every text, every voicemail, every piece of paper. I even printed screenshots of the Facebook post with her ring caption. I built a binder that looked like something out of a detective show, dates, evidence, timelines. Jeff put me in touch with a retired cop named Ellen Park, a private investigator who'd done work for estates and fraud cases. When she heard my story, she didn't laugh, didn't doubt, just said, "If she killed him, she left a trail." They always do. Ellen started digging immediately. She found out Karen had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on my dad 6 months before he died, something my dad had no idea about. On the application, Karen had signed his name and used her cousin, a notary, to witness it. And then there was the medication. Ellen tracked down my dad's pharmacy records. The heart medicine he was prescribed had been changed 3 times in the last 2 months of his life, each time filled under wife's pickup. The dosage increased to a level that, according to a toxicologist Ellen consulted, could induce cardiac failure if taken incorrectly. When Ellen showed me the report, I remember just staring at the numbers, whispering, "She killed him slowly." Meanwhile, Jeff filed a formal motion to suspend Karen's control of the estate pending fraud investigation. It meant she'd be notified, which meant she'd know I was coming. I decided to use that to my advantage. That weekend, I posted something small, a vague, almost innocent Facebook update. Been working with Dad's lawyer. Turns out there were some interesting changes to his paperwork. Can't wait to share more soon. Within hours, Karen unblocked me. Then she called. "Emily," she said, voice sweet as syrup, "you're making a mistake. You don't understand what your father wanted." "I understand enough," I said. "I've seen the video." Silence. Long, tense silence. Then a sharp inhale. "What video?" "You know which one," I said. She hung up. Ellen told me to stay somewhere safe, so I started crashing on a friend's couch across town. A few nights later, Ellen called around midnight. "I've got something," she said. "Tom's cracking. He just called me." Apparently, Tom was panicking. He said Karen had gone unhinged when she found out about the court filing. She was threatening to pin everything on him. He wanted immunity in exchange for telling the truth. Ellen arranged a meeting between Tom and the detectives handling the fraud case. He showed up shaking, pale, clutching a flash drive. That drive contained backup footage from my dad's garage camera, the same one that had caught her pouring his drink. But this time, the video didn't end there. It kept rolling. After my dad took the sip and started feeling unwell, Karen looked directly at the camera again. "You said you'd never leave her anything," she muttered, voice cold. "Now you won't have to." Then she walked over and unplugged the camera. That clip was the break we needed. Ellen brought it straight to the police. Jeff filed an emergency motion with the court. Karen didn't even have time to prepare. Detectives showed up at her new place with a warrant. But the investigation uncovered something else, something even darker than I was ready for. Because when they opened Karen's storage unit, they found a locked file box labeled with my dad's name. Inside were forged documents, fake signatures, and most horrifying, letters written to me that she'd never sent. Letters my dad had written in the last week of his life. And one of those letters changed everything I thought I knew about why she did it. Ellen called me the morning they opened the file box. Her voice was steady, but I could tell she was holding back emotion. "Emily," she said, "you're going to want to sit down for this." She met me at Jeff's office with a stack of papers sealed in an evidence envelope. When she slid them across the desk, I recognized the handwriting instantly, my dad's. The letters were dated just days before he died. There were 5 of them, all addressed to me. The first few were what you'd expect, a dad saying goodbye without really saying goodbye, telling me he loved me, that he was proud of me. But the last letter, that one was different. He wrote, "If this reaches you, it means she went through with it. But there's something you need to know. Karen isn't working alone. She's being pushed." He mentioned a name, David Grayson. I froze. Jeff looked up from reading, frowning. "That name mean anything to you?" It did. David Grayson was my mom's brother, my uncle. A man I hadn't seen in 15 years. My head started spinning. My uncle, what did he have to do with Karen? Ellen went pale. "Emily, there's something else," she said. "The storage unit records show that the rental agreement wasn't just under Karen's name. There's a cosigner, David Grayson." I remember feeling my skin crawl. Ellen started digging deeper, and what she found made me sick. David had been managing small investment accounts for Karen, funneling money from my dad's business sale into offshore transfers before my dad even knew she'd been handling the finances. But it got worse. My dad had discovered the connection 2 weeks before his death. He'd written a letter to Jeff, one that never made it to the lawyer, saying he'd learned Karen had been in contact with my mom's family for months. Apparently, after my mom left, she'd kept tabs on us through her brother. Years later, when my dad met Karen, It wasn't a coincidence. Karen knew who my dad was before they ever met. It was planned. They'd targeted him because of the insurance money and his shop's sale profits. My mom's brother, the same man who'd once borrowed money from my dad and never paid him back, had introduced Karen to my dad at that church picnic. She wasn't even a member of that church. I felt physically sick. My dad hadn't fallen for a charming woman by chance. He'd been set up by my mother's own brother, the man who'd helped her disappear years ago. When Ellen confronted David at his office, he denied everything at first. Then, when she showed him the forged will and the financial transfers traced to his account, he cracked. He admitted he'd helped Karen set everything up, but he swore he didn't know she'd actually kill my dad. It was supposed to be financial, he said. Just scare him into signing over the house. She went too far. Too far. That's what he called poisoning and stealing from a man who raised me alone after his sister abandoned us. When I left Jeff's office that day, I sat in my car for nearly an hour, staring at my hands. It was one thing to think my stepmother had killed my dad out of greed, but finding out it had all started with my own family's betrayal, that the whole thing had been a setup from the beginning, that broke something in me I didn't even know could break. Karen didn't just destroy my dad. She'd been part of a plan that started before they even met, one that came from the very bloodline that was supposed to love me. And now, I knew exactly how to end it. Because if she and David thought they were clever with paperwork and fake smiles, they'd never seen what desperation looked like when it finally stopped being afraid. The more I learned, the less sense it made, until I finally got the full story from David himself. He was sitting in a gray interrogation room when Ellen and I came in. He looked smaller than I remembered, slumped, jittery, hands clasped like a man already halfway to prison. He wouldn't meet my eyes at first, but when he finally did, I could see it. No remorse, just calculation. Ellen started the questioning. Tell her why you did it, David. Tell her why you sent that woman into her father's life. He looked at me and smirked. Because your father took everything from me, I frowned. What are you talking about? He helped you. He loaned you money. He cut me off. He took your mother. You think she left because she didn't love you? No, she left because your dad forced her out. I remember shaking my head. That's not true. She left on her own. She didn't even call. She didn't call because he wouldn't let her, he snapped. Your father ruined her, Emily. After their divorce, she was broke, angry, and sick of hearing his name. He told everyone she abandoned you, but he made sure she couldn't come back. He used the court, the custody, the money, all of it. He humiliated her, and when she finally gave up, she came to me. My chest went tight. He leaned back and said it like it was something righteous. She wanted him to feel what it's like to lose everything. So when Karen and I crossed paths a few years later, it all just fit. Karen hated him for her own reasons, and your mother hated him for hers. I just made the introductions. Ellen looked disgusted. So this wasn't about money, David shrugged. At first it was, but your mother, she wanted him to suffer. Karen just gave her that ending. I stared at him, the words hitting like a slow punch. You're telling me my mom helped plan this? He didn't even hesitate. She didn't just plan it, she paid for it. The insurance policy, that was her money. She put it under Karen's name so no one would trace it. She said if your dad died, she'd finally have peace. I felt like I couldn't breathe. All this time, I'd thought my mom was gone somewhere far away, living her own life, maybe even regretting leaving me. But she hadn't been gone. She'd been pulling strings from the shadows. I asked him, barely able to get the words out, "Where is she now?" He looked at me, and for the first time his confidence cracked. "You don't want to find her." But Ellen leaned forward. "Where?" He swallowed. "Oregon. She's been living there under a different name. She sent Karen money every month. They were supposed to split the payout after the accident. But then Karen got greedy. She started locking David out, cutting off contact. That's why he was trying to get the files. He thought she was going to disappear with everything." I remember staring at the table, hands trembling, as the truth settled like ice in my stomach. My stepmother killed my dad out of greed. But my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, wanted him dead out of hate. She'd used Karen, used David, and let them take the fall. All because my father refused to take her back 20 years ago. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't desperation, it was revenge. Cold, planned, decades in the making. And suddenly, it all made sense. Why Karen had shown up at my door that night, whispering that I didn't know what I was getting into. She hadn't been threatening me. She'd been warning me. Because there was someone worse still out there. Someone who'd been watching from the start. And I wasn't done until she paid too. After that interrogation, everything inside me burned cold. It wasn't rage anymore, it was purpose. The kind that doesn't shout or cry. The kind that plans. Karen was already behind bars, charged with fraud, forgery, and homicide. Her cousin, the fake notary, turned on her the minute he got subpoenaed. Tom got a deal for cooperating. David was next in line for charges, but my mom, she was the real ghost in all of it. I told Ellen I wanted to find her. She warned me, people like her don't apologize. They justify. But I couldn't live with what I knew and not look her in the eye. It took 3 weeks. She'd been living under the name Marion Foster in a rental outside Salem, Oregon. Retired, teaching piano to neighborhood kids. It made me sick to even think about it. I didn't go alone. Ellen came, along with a local detective who was coordinating with Tacoma PD. They had enough from David's confession to bring her in for questioning, money transfers, burner emails, the insurance link. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, she froze. Her face went pale, then twisted into something between shock and annoyance. "Emily," she said, like I was an inconvenience. "How did you?" I stepped forward. "He's dead, Mom," she blinked, then looked at the detective behind me and sighed. I figured this would happen eventually. No tears, no denial, just that. When they read her the charges, she didn't resist, didn't even ask for a lawyer. She just kept saying, "He deserved it. He took everything from me." I asked her one question before they put her in the car. "And what about me? What did I do?" She turned her head just enough for me to see her eyes, empty, bitter, familiar. "You were his." That was all she said. That night, I drove back to Tacoma. I stopped at the cemetery, my dad's real headstone, the one I'd arranged after the police released his body for a proper funeral. His name was carved clean and simple, no lies in the inscription. I sat there for a long time just talking to him, told him everything about Karen, about David, about Mom. Told him the truth finally came out. The case took months to close. Karen pled guilty to second-degree murder and fraud. David took a plea for conspiracy and financial crimes. My mother, she didn't make it to trial. She hung herself in county lockup 2 weeks before her first hearing. I thought I'd feel relief when it was over. But all I felt was quiet. The kind that comes after a storm tears everything down and there's nothing left to save. When the estate finally got sorted, Jeff called me in to sign the final paperwork. After everything, the cars, the money, the house, there wasn't much left. Just one thing, a small velvet box the police had recovered from Karen's jewelry stash. Inside was the ring, my grandmother's ring. The one Dad said was meant for someone who deserved my heart. I keep it in my dresser now, not on my finger. I don't wear it. It's not a symbol of love anymore, it's a reminder that some people destroy everything they touch for no reason but to prove they still can. That justice isn't clean, but it's real if you're willing to see it through. And that sometimes, the hardest revenge isn't what you do to them, it's surviving everything they tried to take from you.